The pink dory scraped its wooden belly along the quay, and old Tom slid a crate beneath my feet so I could climb to the wheel. And in that small lift of gravity, I felt the sea lean in and tell me a secret I would not forget. The air tasted of salt and rope and something faintly sweet, like lemon rind left out in the sun. The boat trembled under us, a patient animal, and the world grew larger and closer at once as we rolled toward the open water. I could hear the distant clank of nets drying against the shed, the gulls circling, and then letting out their noisy, certain cries, the soft rasp of tar on wood when old Tom's fingers brushed the wheel, as if he was smoothing a tired old man's brow. Old Tom was not a grand teacher in the way you read about in books. He wore a sweater that smelled of smoke and seaweed, and when he spoke, he showed me how to grip the wheel without trembling, how to keep my eyes on the line where water met sky, how to listen to the little noises a boat makes when the tide lifts it a fraction and then settles again. He told me that the sea is a good listener too, if you are willing to lean toward her and keep your mouth shut long enough for her to speak. We started with a gentle hop from the harbour into glassy water, the kind of surface that looks as if someone has poured a clean, quiet blue into the world. The sun warmed my cheeks and set the salt to dancing on my lips. Old Tom pointed toward a speck of a boat far off, then toward a line of white foam where the fish would surge if the day decided to smile on us. He spoke softly about wind and current, about reading a sky that has never sounded the same twice, about how patience is really just attention wearing a gentler coat. The memory holds a particular moment, sharp as a shell pressed to the ear. A sudden breeze came and pressed the boat into a deeper tilt, enough to make my stomach lift and a shiver of fear slide through me. The horizon sharpened, the blue turned into something more serious, as if the sea herself were clearing her throat to speak a truth she does not offer to those who hurry. Old Tom did not hurry. He steadied my hands on the wheel and whispered, as if secrets might break if spoken aloud. That fear is simply a way the body tells you you are still alive. And alive is something you choose, even when your legs tremble and your breath catches. We don't fight the sea, kid, he said, not looking at me, but beyond me, where the line of water met the line of sky. We learn from her. If she wants to turn us back, we listen. If she nudges us forward, we listen harder. The wind sang through the rigging. The boat gave a little sigh, as if it remembered a time before me. I pressed my palms to the wheel, and the tremor in my arms found a rhythm, a patient pulse that matched the slow, patient breath of the sea. In that hour, I learned something simple and almost ridiculous. To be brave does not mean to be unmoved by fear, but to move with it, to let it sit quietly at your shoulder while you do what must be done. Old Tom's hands were rough and careful, the sort of hands that seemed to have been made for mending nets and mending lives at once. When we returned to shore, the boat's wooden frame breathed out a long, satisfied sigh, as if it too had learned its own lesson. We hauled in the nets and laid them to rest on the wooden planks, and the harbour smelled of tar and brine and the citrus sting of the oranges old Tom's wife had tucked into a tin there by the toolbox. He broke bread and shared a slice of orange with me, then wiped his hands on his shirt and looked at me with the kind of seriousness a man commits to a family secret. "Remember what you felt today," he said, "the way the sea made your breath a little slower, the way your hands remembered their place on the wheel. That stillness is a tool you'll carry forever. That is the moment that stitched itself to my spine, a small, unassuming quiet, a memory of maintaining balance while the world tilted and time forgot to be polite. It was not a dramatic revelation, not a flash of fate, but something more durable. A lesson in keeping promises to what you cannot see, and keeping your own breath aligned with the breath of those you love. From that day on, I carried into every task the habit of listening before acting. I learned to measure my courage less by the shouts I could utter, and more by the quiet I could hold, the space I could keep for another person to find their own center. In later years, when the world seemed louder and more fractious than the quiet harbour ever was, that memory often visited me as simply as a sea breeze on a hot afternoon. I became a nurse, not a hero in a courtroom drama, but a quiet fellow who learned to sit with a patient and wait for them to tell me how the night had pressed on them, or how their breath sounded when hope crept in again. I learned to translate fear into a pace that anyone could travel, to slow down the room with a patient smile and a steady touch, to remind a family that the small, ordinary rituals, a cup of tea offered at the bedside, a hand held through a tremor, are enough to carry a person through the lean hours. The sea's patience became a model for how I moved through wards, how I listened to a cough, a tremor, a whispered memory, until the room itself settled into a rhythm of being cared for and caring back. Even now, when age has slowed my walk and my fingers have learned a stubborn, brittle kind of gentleness, I still carry the memory with me like a small scallop shell pressed into a book. I can feel the rough grain of the wheel beneath my palms, hear the rope's soft scratch against the wooden lip of the boat, smell the brine and the orange rind, and the smoke of a distant kitchen where a kettle sings. I stand on my porch and watch the trees tremble in a warm, late afternoon wind. And, if I listen very closely, I can hear the distant sigh of water as it falls back toward the horizon. The way a lullaby sounds when it has learned to be a map, not a mystery. Time has attending guests, grief, longing, memories ache. But they are gentle, not cruel. They come and go with the seasons, like boats that rise on a tide, then fade back toward the harbour. The old man's hands do not work on the same deck now, and I am no longer the boy who could be asked to steer. But I am still the same person who learned to blend fear with patience, to steady the heart, to listen before speaking, to give what one can give and leave what one cannot control intact with the sea's own mercy. The memory of that summer, of that day when the world briefly widened and then narrowed again to the touch of a wheel and the warmth of bread, remains a kind of compass. I am grateful for that afternoon and for all the ones that followed in its wake. The nights when the house seems too still and the memory of the harbour comes to my kitchen. The days when the sun weighs heavy on the back of the world, and I practice the simple discipline old Tom taught me. The discipline of listening first and speaking with care. Time will take much from us, but meaning does not vanish with age. It lingers like the taste of salt on a summer's breath, like the glimmer of a remembered boat sliding out across a calm bay. The sea, I have learned, does not forget those who have learned to listen, and neither do I.